Hello there, and welcome back once again to another edition of Reach the Peak, the show where we take the cars of Forza Horizon 3 on the toughest challenge they can face, a snowy, technical hill climb course high up in Blizzard Mountain. We have 5 cars here for you today, and we kick things off with a car that has a hell of a reputation to live up to. It is the return of Lamborghini with the 2016 Lamborghini Aventador SV, 740 horsepower, 508 foot-pound torque, 3,868 pounds of weight. This is the most powerful car here today. PI wise, it is S2 class, with the exact number being 922. Lamborghini Aventador SV then, this car does have a lot to live up to. You see, the top car on our leaderboard right now by far is the Lamborghini Veneno. The second car on our leaderboard is the Lamborghini Sesto Elemento. They have a second between them, and well, an entire second between them and what's in third place currently, which is the only other car that isn't a Lamborghini to break the 2-minute barrier, which is the MG Metro Horizon Edition. Yeah, Lamborghinis are, well, very well set up for this. Obviously, 4-wheel drive, big power, lots of traction. They're just excellent cars to drive on-road and apparently off-road as well, although I wouldn't really recommend doing that in real life. And well, the Aventador SV, as you can probably see here, is no different. It has excellent amounts of traction. The car in general is excellent. It doesn't really like the bumps, however that sometimes isn't necessarily a bad thing. You see, cars with hard suspension, you expect them to do poorly up here because obviously they bounce around a lot when they land. However, cars with softer suspension can do that as well. Cars with softer suspension can actually be more tricky to drive up here than some cars with harder suspension. It's a bit of a weird one. Some bumps cars with softer suspension will be more affected by, and cars with harder suspension will be more affected by. This particular sort of back straight here with the ice patches is really difficult for some cars with harder suspension to deal with. Just because you're getting bounced around a lot, you don't hit the ice patches because you will lose a hell of all the time, but over the bigger jumps it doesn't really affect them too much. Overall though, this car is absolutely fantastic to drive up here, and well, we'll have to wait until the end of the show to see just how well up the leaderboard it goes, but let's just say I'm quietly confident in it doing pretty well. Next up, a car which I wasn't sure how well it was going to do. It's another returning car, although this one is the newer version. This is the 2016 Dodge Viper ACR. 645 horsepower, 600 foot-pound torque, 3,368 pounds of weight. This is the torquiest car here today. Interestingly enough, it's also the highest in PI. It is another S2 class car, 924 being the PI number on this when equipped with the snow tyres. However, don't let that PI fool you because, well, as we know, the Dodge Viper is a rear-wheel drive, which means in terms of chasing after some of the higher-up cars, yeah, it's toast because rear-wheel drive cars up here, it's the worst drivetrain you can have, basically, for going up this course. I do rather like the 2016 Viper ACR. In fact, it might be one of my favourite cars of all time. I love the final edition Viper, and the ACR truly to drive, at least here in Forza, absolutely excellent. It is pretty much set up exactly the way I'd like to drive a car. It is phenomenally grippy. I really like the Viper ACR, and I highly recommend it to anyone who wants to go ahead and drive one, whether it be motorsports or Horizon. However, when it comes to this track, unsurprisingly, it really struggles. On top of having rear-wheel drive, you also have the engine which is sort of set more towards the middle in a Viper. It's sort of behind the front axles, which also doesn't bode well for a course like this, especially considering the engine sort of... It's so far forward you can't really consider it mid-engined, but it's so far back that it still causes a couple of issues with the car handling-wise. The selling point of the Viper ACR obviously is the insane amount of downforce it produces, but on a course like this, with sort of the slower technical turns, it cannot get the downforce down, which I don't think would help it, even if that was a factor. Overall, yeah, it's an excellent car. It's just really horrifically set up for this type of course. Admittedly, it did do surprisingly well over the sort of straight ice patch bumps, so that's something to note. But yeah, as an overall package, I wouldn't recommend driving this thing up here, unless you do some serious modification. If you do serious modification, this thing actually becomes a leaderboard car up here. I was ranked second in the world up here for S2 using a Viper ACR at some point. It was obviously all-wheel drive swapped and so on and so forth. But yeah, if you're going to drive one up here, you need to seriously modify it. Next up, we have the 2016 Porsche Cayman GT4, 385 horsepower, 309 foot-pound torque, 2,955 pounds of weight. This car is S1 class, 861 being the PI when equipped with the snow tyres. another sort of track-focused car. I was just sort of curious to see how the Cayman would get on. Of course, the interesting thing with the Cayman is its mid-engined rear drive. We've actually seen that being a bit of a mixed bag up here. Sometimes it can result in horrible weight of the rear, which basically means the car gets lugged around through all the corners. However, sometimes it actually means it can sort of really press some weight down on the rear tyres, and that sometimes can actually make you faster because it can build traction up. I'm pleased to report, because I actually really like the Cayman GT4, it does the latter. It's actually a surprisingly good car to drive up here with really decent traction, which I wasn't really expecting. The other sort of thing that I didn't really talk about with the Viper that this car has is, I've spoken before about cars with unnecessary power. You know, having power up here is excellent, you know, as we saw with the Lamborghini, you know, 740 horsepower, that's all good, but if you're a rear-wheel drive car, it might actually sometimes be better to have less power, and that certainly is the case with the Cayman. With only 385 horsepower, there isn't so much power to lose by just spinning the rear wheels, while as the 645 in the Viper just constantly gets spun through the rear wheels because it can't put it down, but the Cayman can put it down. Now, if this car had 600 horsepower, it would probably be a totally different story. I can imagine this thing would actually be pretty horrible to drive, but as it stands, it's actually pretty darn well set up for a mid-engine car. It's got about the right amount of power if you're rear-wheel drive going up this course, so that's pretty good. Because it's sort of a little bit slower, it actually does deal with the bumps, especially, again, the icy straight I'm talking about a lot today. But this car doesn't deal with that really very well because it's a little bit slower, which means you can sort of calculate where you're going and so on and so forth, and they can make it a hell of a lot easier to drive, and easier to drive means slightly quicker, usually anyway. Next up, well, we go from a couple of cars not made to this course for a car which is totally ready to take on this course. This is the 2005 Subaru Impreza WRX STI. This particular version is the upgrade Hero, which you can do in the modification screen. It's basically the pre-made modified Impreza. 549 horsepower, 477 foot-pound torque, 2,938 pounds of weight. This is, interestingly enough, the lightest car here today, despite being all-wheel drive. S1900 is the PI. When you upgrade Hero this car, it comes with snow tyres because, well, in case you couldn't tell, they basically pre-make it into a rally car. Now, we've seen upgrade heroes on this track before, obviously. One of them did very well indeed, and that would be the Evo 6 upgrade hero, which almost broke in to the under 2-minute barrier. In fact, I believe that was the fastest car that we had for a little while back in the day. So this car really has got to sort of go up against that. And similar to the Evo, yeah, this thing is pretty much spot on for this sort of course, as you would sort of expect. It's, yeah, pretty phenomenal. The one issue it does have, and all these sort of rally-made upgrade heroes do have that, is they do get the rally suspension. Now, the rally suspension is good. It means the car can deal really well with the bumps. However, with the soft suspension, it does mean it doesn't settle as quickly, which does mean you can actually get bounced around a little bit more. As I said with the Lamborghini Aventador, it's sort of a blessing and a curse at the same time, but of course the car has stuff to make up for that. For example, it has a rally gearbox which has hilariously short gear ratios, which means you can constantly be on the turbo, constantly be on the power. With about 550 horsepower in an all-wheel drive car, and being as light as it is, power to weight ratio is pretty much spot on in this thing. Overall, yeah, it's pretty much as you really want. If you're going to attack this course, if you're sort of a beginner, not really sure what to take up this course, I do highly recommend, you know, either this or the Evo if you're so inclined. They're both excellent sort of cars for taking on this course, and they're perfectly set up from standard. And finally, well, if this was a real course, this would probably end up being our champion for today. It is the 2007 Toyota Hilux AT38. AT38 course standing for Arctic Trucks. 169 horsepower, 265 foot-pound torque, 4,740 pounds of weight. This is the least powerful car here today, the least torquey car here today, the heaviest car here today, and the lowest in PI. It is a B-class car, 647 in PI, when equipped with the snow tyres, which it is done by default. I love this thing. I remember seeing this back when it came out for the Hot Wheels expansion. I just said to myself, this thing needs to go up, reach the peak. It is, yeah, basically the sort of car, again, it's the car that when you think of a sort of snowy hill climb course, what sort of car would you like to take? One that's going to absolutely batter cars. This should be fairly close to the top. yeah, in terms of durability, of course, this one would keep going up here all day, every day, because, well, it's a Hilux, and Hilux can't die, and even better, it's a diesel Hilux, which means it certainly can't die. Now, that being said, that's all well and good. However, there is an elephant in the room here, and that's its awful power-to-weight ratio. It weighs almost 5,000 pounds, and it has 169 horsepower, which, this is Forza. That really is not a lot. And as a result, this car is absolutely excellent to drive. The handling is superb. This thing has massive tyres. I think they're 405 width or something like that. Yeah, insanely big tyres, loads of traction, four-wheel drive. That means it is just stupid grippy. It, honest to God, feels like a car that could take on another 300 horsepower, and you really would not have to do a lot to it. Probably, you know, change out the gearbox and stuff, but in terms of its actual handling, yeah, it feels like it would still handle. However, it's so slow. It's insanely slow, which is a big shame. If this thing, you know, even if it had, you know, 350 foot-pound torque and 200 horsepower, this would be doing a hell of a lot better, but as just stock, it is way too slow for this sort of course. It is fun to drive up here. I love driving the Hilux. I think it's absolutely fantastic. It's probably one of my favourite cars in the game, just sort of on a visual and personal appeal alone, but yeah, the Hilux, not quick. It's just not quite there, unfortunately. Which is a big shame. Maybe I'll end up running a highly modified one up here just to see how well it does, but in its stock form, yeah, it certainly is not going to break any records here on the leaderboard. And speaking of the leaderboard, we go to it and find out the Lamborghini Aventador SV goes into third place with 158.185. The Lamborghinis lock down the top three positions. Will anything be able to get up there that isn't a Lamborghini? We will have to wait and see. In sixth place, the Subaru Impreza WRX STI Upgrade Hero 159.586, phenomenally quick, almost a second quicker than the Evo 6, and it becomes another car to enter the under 2 minutes wall, which is interesting considering we only had 4 cars at the start today, and now we have 6 of them up there. In 62nd place, we find the Porsche Cayman GT4 with a 209.997, getting just under 2 minutes 10 seconds. Just underneath that, in 63rd place, we find the Dodge Viper ACR with 210.297. Honestly, that does feel like it could have gone a little bit quicker. Obviously, you can see the older car was quicker, but that ACR is just so tricky to drive up there. It really does not like driving up our course. And finally today, in 228th place, we find the Toyota Hilux AT38 with a 239.560. It is quicker than the Mazda Cosmo and the Opel Kadett, slightly slower than a Mark II Jag, and unfortunately a Mustang II King Cobra. It's just the power to weight ratio on that car really ruined it, which is a bit of a shame. Again, I'd love to drive a highly modified one up there and see how well it can do. Anyways, that is it for another edition of Reach Speak. I do hope you've enjoyed. Stay tuned for the next episode. Until next time, farewell.